Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Ducro. I'm a researcher at IIED, and my work focuses on nature finance. As you know, today we're going to be speaking about the role of the private sector in financing nature and locally led action, which is admittedly something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Questions around what is the private sector already doing? What can they do? What should they do? This topic has been increasingly discussed in recent years, specifically in the context of decreasing aid budgets, and we're hearing more and more calls to the private sector to increase their engagement in both climate and nature spending. But this ask is often referred to kind of at a higher level, pointing to the private sector as an unlimited source of funding that can kind of seamlessly be allocated to funding gaps, when in reality we know it's much more complicated than that. So the private sector is an incredibly diverse group of stakeholders with different priorities and remits and abilities to engage in locally led nature action. So kind of the exercise today is to lean into that heterogeneity, to explore how we can practically engage the private sector in an ethical way, of course, in a meaningful way, to support those at the forefront of the nature and climate crises. So before we get started, Ebony, if you could just shift to the next slide, I'm just going to get us on the same page for two key terms. So the first is nature finance, which we have defined. It kind of has a variety of different definitions, but in the IIED nature finance strategy, it's all funds. It's funds from all sources that have an impact on nature and people. So they can either be, it can be pro-nature finance, meaning that these funds support nature and people, or it can be nature harmful finance, which is funds that have a negative impact on the environment and on people, such as harmful subsidies. So it's important to consider both sides of this coin for many reasons. Of course, one of them being that the nature finance gap is categorized by kind of increasing the positive spending on nature while also decreasing the negative spending on nature, which is how we get to that $700 billion figure that we're all too familiar with. And then the second term is locally led, which we definitely acknowledge has different definitions in a variety of contexts. So here it refers to when Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant peoples, local communities, and other local groups and people have the agency to influence, design, to prioritize, and to monitor and evaluate the actions that affect them. So with that in mind, we're just going to zoom in now quickly on the private sector. This is the last slide before we get to our speakers. And this can also be a variety of different kind of types of finance. To kind of get your mind thinking on this, it includes financial institutions that may provide kind of more traditional loans or insurance. It includes impact and philanthropic investment that can provide more catalytic investment that might be higher risk. It could also be kind of corporations investing in their supply chains. And importantly, and kind of crucially, some groups that don't often come to mind when people think of the private sector, it could also be small or medium enterprises that are reinvesting their revenue into their own businesses to be more nature friendly, or perhaps they have nature objectives. And it can be internally generated finance, perhaps from farmers' organizations or village savings groups. And these groups do have a real and measurable impact on nature and people, so it's important not to forget this type of finance. So with all this in mind, we're going to get started. Just to review the agenda quickly, we're going to start with a quick lightning round of our three speakers, and then we'll break into two breakout groups where we'll be able to get into deeper conversations. And then after the breakout groups, we'll come back together to share what we discussed and for a brief closing and wrap up. And just to say, we're really pleased to have worked with as a group to co-host this event, which has included IIED, the Green Economy Coalition, and also the initiative of reversing environmental degradation in Africa and Asia. So thanks for your collaboration on that. Great. So without further ado, let's jump right into our lightning talks. Just a reminder, each speaker you'll have 3 minutes to cover your points, and we're going to start with Chaitanya Naskar from She Changes Climate. So if you could kick us off by first introducing yourself and sharing what you do and how your work supports nature and locally led action through private sector financing. And then for all the speakers, if you could also provide one recommendation on how to draw stronger links between the private sector and locally led nature action. So Chaitanya, over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. I would like to start with, thanking the organizer for giving me this opportunity and to, welcome all the participants and thank all the participants. My name is Chetna Naskar and I am the India lead for She Changes Climate. So a little bit about She Changes Climate, I would like to say that we believe in equal participation of women at all levels of decision making, as well as unlocking women's leadership for accelerating climate solution. We believe that uniting women leaders across sectors is the most powerful way to restore gender balance in climate governance and develop climate policies that adequately address gender inequalities. As a global movement, She Changes Climate seeks to amplify a unified voice for just and inclusive climate action. We have already launched a 50-50 campaign that calls for equal participation, equitable investment, and equal policy power. So currently we have 6 country network. We have the networks are in Brazil, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Nepal, India, and France, through which we advance our work for gender responsive. Our work is much more focused on, gender responsive aspect, along with locally led climate action. So we do this by strengthening community leadership, capacity building, policy advocacy, and preparing the local communities for equitable private sector engagement. Our initiatives are also very context specific. Therefore, in India, Zimbabwe, and Kenya, we are much more focused on influencing national and subnational climate policies towards a gender transformative and inclusive in nature, because climate finance is also very much a part of our national policies and the NDCs as well. In Kenya also focuses on sustainable business models that integrate climate goals into local economic activities. Zimbabwe has been pioneer in drafting the gender action plan as well as the position paper for just transition and agriculture. And currently it has also conducted a climate diplomacy training for young women to build the leadership pipeline, helping them engage in climate finance and governance. In India, we are also strengthening women leadership at the grassroots level, bringing their, focusing on their initiatives, their businesses that are eco-friendly. We work with various think tanks and NGOs that work with women at the grassroots level that drive community-led initiatives. In Nepal, we connect women, youth, and indigenous group with opportunities in climate resilient agriculture, because Nepal is a largely agricultural community, and women really, huge proportion of women are into agriculture. But we also focus on building local readiness for tapping gender responsive financing that values nature-based solution. In Brazil, we are directly working with women farmers, forest restorers, and producer of medicinal plant, helping them link their initiative to climate and finance agenda. We are currently mapping women-led nature-based solution across Brazil's 6 biome to generate critical data to unlock equitable investment. And to link with this, the recommendation that I would say is that it is very, very important that I think that one of the major recommendations to link private sector nature and locally led action would be, generating meaningful data. Currently, we do not have data that would be not only having having a homogenized data, but data that is sex disaggregated or gender disaggregated data that will highlight the impact, the socioeconomic impact that such kind of investing can bring. So therefore, moving towards sustainable investing, and also creating a data transparency, because data transparency will create confidence and trust. And without trust and confidence that you inculcate in the private sector investor about, sustainable investing, that will also give them some kind of profitability, or the community-led initiatives would be bankable. They will not be interested in investing. So I think transparency is important. Data is important. Sex or gender disaggregated data, transparency, building trust and confidence. So thank you so much. With this, I would like to ask you, Anna, to take it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was great. I think it's kind of great to start the conversation from this position of trust. And of course, that can come from a variety of different ways, like you say, kind of providing having more data, specifically disaggregated data on key issues. Of course, gender being one of them. And I really like what you said around kind of the question of equity, but equity both in the impact and also in the process. So the decision making and the governance. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully we can pick up those points in the breakout groups. So we're going to now have a short video from Toi Nguyen, sorry, who is the Vietnam program coordinator from Recoft. And she has sent a video. So Georgina is going to tee this up for us.
Hello everyone, my name is Thuy Nguyen. I am a program coordinator at Recoft Vietnam. At Recoft, we work with indigenous people and local community living in and around forests to manage forest landscape sustainably. We have office in 7 countries in Asia and the Pacific, but our work expands beyond this region. In 2024, we received a grant from Reversing Environmental Degradation in Africa and Asia program, which is funded by FCDO of the UK government to support local community in Myanmar and in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we support coffee growers who are Thieu and core ethnic minority groups in Lâm Đồng to shift their farming practices towards protect environmental, such as soil, water, enhance biodiversity, and therefore diversify the income and increase climate resilience. Additionally, we support sustainable coffee business through building coffee business capacity of local cooperative and promoting partnership between them and private sector, such as company and other cooperative in the region. We also work with farmers in our project to develop participatory monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework. With this now, farmers in our project are recording their farming and business activity in the logbooks. In the long run, this will provide powerful evidence for farmers to scale up best practices in other farms and also to share the best practices with farmers in the region. This also provides information available and transparent for traceability and therefore building trust with private sector and attracting their financing and partnership. Today, private sector actors such as exporting companies are increasingly demanding products that meet quality standards. And therefore, cooperatives such as those we are supporting need not only to provide legal and sustainable products, but also demonstrate professional business skills such as provide agree product timely, consistent and increasing quality product. And those are focus of our project to support both farmer and local cooperative to drive sustainable coffee sector in the region. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tori, and thanks, Georgina, for setting that up. I think you can I'm catching similar themes of transparency and trust coming out of that, but also I like how Tori was speaking about kind of building on the existing systems, such as the local cooperatives, which we know is so key to ensuring solutions are locally appropriate, especially when kind of we're thinking of how we can build on existing systems and scale up. So now I'm going to pass to our final speaker, Angelica from the GEF Small Grants Program. So again, if you could share a bit about yourself and your work, how you engage the private sector, and one recommendation you have. Over to
you. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I work in Small Grants Program in various capacities. I've been working there for over a decade as a climate change advisor, regional focal point for various regions, including Latin American, Caribbean, Arab states, Europe, Central Asia, and also as an interim global manager for the last 2 years, and now back covering a number of regions. So, that was a significant part of my career. The Small Grants Program is a corporate program of Global Environment Facility, which is implemented by UNDP United Nations Development Program, on behalf of the GEF. And the main mission of the program is providing financial and technical support to local civil society community-based organizations to implement local action to address global environmental issues, including climate, biodiversity, and waste management and others, in support of Rio Conventions. So we actually collaborate, SGP, we as in SGP, collaborate with partners from the private sector in many different ways already. They include provision of technical assistance and capacity building, which range from global to local, and globally could be, one example is, for example, Microsoft providing technical solutions to wildlife containment issues and some others, and fishing and so on. In-kind support in many countries, businesses, big and small, support community action for various reasons, including chocolate producers, other green products-oriented businesses. There is a direct cash contributions as well. Marketing and advocacy support, it's all on local level. And then as a program, we also do policy dialogues, including private sector, and those dialogues to discuss key policy processes in the countries. And that includes academia, that includes private sector, and government and civil society. So it's interesting that technical assistance constitute most of the support that private sector provides to our projects. By our statistics, it's almost half of that help, 45%. Then advocacy and marketing support and cash contribution, kind contributions all make about 20% of that support. So it's quite significant already. The type of industries include green products, not surprisingly. It includes ecotourism and including hotels and hotel associations supporting programs, for example. It includes revolving funds, microcredit schemes, certification. And the smallest and developing area is about 3% is payment for ecosystem services, which is a bit more complex, right? And also complicated because of the ownership and other issues, right? So just very quickly, some examples. So they include, for example, our collaboration with investment funds like Mar Invest Plus, helping to identify and prepare cooperatives and small enterprises to take advantage of available private funding. That's just one example. Another is community credit model at Costa Rica, empowering communities to handle small credit for producers and in training and providing those seed capital. Directly developing community green enterprises, which include tea production in Mauritius, fish sauce production in Vietnam, fertilizer in St. Lucia, all of this by providing energy access, for example, clean energy access or initial supplies, training, etc. So many local small community businesses we are supporting as our grantees, particularly in those areas where nature is involved, this ecotourism, agriculture, production, and so on. Many success stories on that. That's a traditional, if you want, a charcoal business is a traditional private sector support, right? Another a bit less traditional is partnering with private foundations to create opportunities for business in those countries where this landscape a bit more advanced. For example, in Armenia, we partnered with Coca-Cola Foundation to create opportunities for waste management for local companies to do circular, to participate in circular economy, to recycle, collect waste in responsible manner, and so on. So this is one a little bit, I think, a way that deserves further diving into. And there I come to my recommendations. I think I have one, basically. I think one concerning public finance, which I represent, which we all, UNDP, UN, the shrinking public finance, I should say now in particular. I think public finance should be more, this shrinking little public finance should be more actively deployed to bridge the gap between grassroots and private funding. Because in one aspect, the grassroots projects can be too small to qualify for loans, even for development bank facilities and so on. So this urgently needed to de-risk this funding, to bridge the gap, to prepare those little organizations. So more attention should be paid for that. There's not enough projects on that front, I think. And this is one, because there is almost nothing between very small, and very small keeps shrinking, by the way, and very big, sexy facility, this and that, which most local action organizations do not qualify for or cannot handle. So this is one, and we need to advocate more for that. And the other one, of course, private sector, big and small, some big, but some smaller organizations, smaller companies who have, for example, environmentally friendly products as their product. Of course, they have absolute good fit supporting some small actions. So we need to make easier for them, maybe with tax breaks, incentives. We, meaning governments, we have to give recommendations. And other big businesses who probably don't have any incentives to support small organizations and do charity, which is not their revenue. Only they have this incentive if there is a consumer sentiment and there is a government regulation. As of now, there is sustainability as a field, and I've been looking into that as well, how these projects that we do can be linked to those investments that big companies make in sustainability. And there are ways, for example, through sourcing projects to keep to help offset emissions. Again, we need to do it in very responsible, ethical way, and yet there is a stream of funding that can be used this way. Also, the nature-based solutions and so on. So there is the big field there, not so much explored. Because the companies, they keep like it's an insular ecosystem of their consultants and so on, where I think us supporting this on the ground projects need to come in to connect at least some, to get at least some investments from that stream, because sustainability still exists and still demanded by the governments, even those governments that decided not to, for example, like in the US, where I'm based now, decided not to invest. Companies continue to invest in sustainability because of consumer sentiment, because they work globally. So that stream, I think, we need to build bridge to that stream of funding and to see where it can come. Of course, not from horrible activities, not like community payments from damaging companies, no. But we have to look at due diligence and so on. But there are companies that have very heavy related nature. Let's say L'Oreal, which has a lot of activities on sustainability. Why not try to tap in with our community investment into this kind of companies that are interested and open to that? So that would be my recommendations. I hope it was within the time.
Yes, that was great. Thanks, Angelica. Thanks specifically for providing that perspective of how public funds can support private sector finance. And of course, we know private sector is kind of adjusting to the decreasing in public funds, but then equally public funds have to kind of adjust themselves to make sure that they're being the most kind of catalytic for that private sector finance, specifically on de-risking, which I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, great. So we're going to now pull up the results of the Mentimeter. I saw, Ebony, you put some in the chat, but I can kind of speak to that as you share slides. So yeah, there's lots coming up. So the big question of how do we ensure it's not just profit driven? Is private sector ready to support locally led action? Who really is the private sector, which is a big question. What does success look like, specifically in models of radical collaboration? So there's kind of lots to digest there. Ebony has also put in kind of 4 bigger questions for the breakout groups into the chat. So with that, we'll send you on your way to the groups. I just want to make sure Jackie's here to send us into the breakout groups. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So we are kind of getting to the end of our session, but before we do the closing, it would be great to hear from each of the groups to kind of cross-pollinate between the breakout groups. So if someone, let's start with group one, which is the group that I was in. If someone is able to kind of provide the top key message. I didn't follow my own advice and we don't have a repertoire. So I might call on maybe Karina, if you could go ahead.
I was, Anna, if you allow me, I was actually going to ask if we could pass to Anne because she shared really exciting
Sure.
experience, and I wouldn't want to capture your thoughts. Anne, can we perhaps put you on the spot a little bit without any preparation, but please continue. Also, we got cut off in the breakout group. So anything that you took away from the session or that you'd like to share with the group and well, now you've got a bigger stage.
Okay, so I think so I would say that so I'm Angela, I work with Namati, and we support communities to know, use, and shape the law on land, environment, and climate. I think for me, I was saying I think we are fairly new in terms of thinking about how the private sector and community-led action, how they come together, but it's part of what we are looking at as a scope for like a new strategy. So mostly we have been supporting communities to be able to defend their rights when they have like private sector comes in, there's like investments coming into in their territories, and we're supporting them through the free prior informed consent and be able to negotiate for that. But now we are thinking about how communities can be leaders in terms of community-led renewable energy projects and also community-led forestry conservation projects and how they can get direct funding for that. So my question was around because in the private sector, there's a lot of language when it comes to the return on investments and also investing in particular schemes that can actually return the investment, but also at the same time that they know that there's a business model that works. And sometimes communities may have local knowledge, but they do not really have perhaps that business acumen. So I was wondering what comes first, whether it's capacity building for them first, and then now we reach out, or how it happens. And I really loved the discussions about it being two ways. So the capacity building on the private sector side and then also on the community side, and also language, and having where language can actually come together and we can be able to know, like in the private sector, this could be the language to use to be able to navigate that terrain, and also like for the private sector to be more aware of that. So yeah, that's basic. I think that's it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Anne, and thanks for stepping in when we put you on the spot. So I'll pass to group two.
Yeah, thanks. That was our job to facilitate. And like you, Anne, I'm really rubbish at this. I forgot to ask somebody to take the notes at the beginning, so I volunteered myself at the end to do this. Big issue for us was around building trust is critical, and data is at the heart of it. We saw data as having two directions: data for the investors, that's empirical stuff that really enables people to say, yeah, that's worth investing in. But there's also data the other way, data for local actors, data around lived user experience, data around what works. And we felt that across that, platforms are critical as a connecting place to actually bring not only actors together, but data and information that builds trust.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, it's great to hear kind of the different directions that the conversations went in the breakout groups. So just to kind of close, I think as the session started, we knew that trust. I think we're all in agreement that trust is a key part of expanding the private sector engagement. And for trust, as Stuart was mentioning, as Chaitanya mentioned at the beginning, we need transparency, and we need information to be flowing both ways. And then actually something that we discussed that's key to trust in breakout group one was that you also need clear communication. So all parties need to be speaking the same language. And so this kind of trust and the clear communication is the basis of partnership. And then kind of related to this full information, it's not only on the data and kind of the evaluating of the impact and the process of engagements, but also full information on the laws and processes, like Anne was mentioning in her wrap up. So this kind of not only ensures that there's equity, but also that the choices that the choices that all parties are making, to be honest, are kind of free choices and with the full picture. And having this kind of full picture of information also allows people to step into leadership positions when they might be the best suited to lead. So I think kind of what really came out to me in this conversation is that it's really important that all of the parties play to their strengths. We know that communities have deep local and historic knowledge of the context. They're also quite entrepreneurial in nature, whereas the private sector might have more experience kind of with maybe some technical analysis or kind of legal support in that respect, and also kind of course financial support. So I think it's really a matter of kind of creating the types of partnerships that draw on the strengths of all groups and kind of coming together with the joint objectives. So I'll leave it there. And before we do wrap up, I just wanted to say thank you to our speakers. Thank you so much for joining us, Chaitanya, Tui, and Angelica. We really appreciate your help with the session. And thank you also to the co-hosting team who worked to organize this event. So shout out to Ebony and Nicola, Catherine, Karina, Stuart, Georgina, and Francesca, as well as the organizers of D&C Days. And then also thank you to the participants. You really kind of make D&C Days more exciting, and it's great to hear about the experiences from all around the world. And please do be in touch if you want to keep the conversation going. Thanks again.